Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brad Harbison. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to take part in today's webinar, Fleet Management Best Practices for Pest Control, sponsored by Azuga. And during the next hour, you will hear about solutions from Azuga that can help you better manage your fleet and service technicians' driving behavior in order to reduce costs and boost safety, efficiency, and service. A quick note to pass along, this is an interactive webinar, and we encourage everyone to ask questions throughout. You can do so by instant messaging them to us in the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Now I'm going to turn things over to Azuga's Keith Hallisey, who will provide an overview of the webinar and introduce this afternoon's speakers. Keith?
Hey, thanks so much, Brad. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. Appreciate it. We're going to cover off on a couple things today. We're first going to introduce our panelists, and then we're breaking down our conversation into three sections. One is going to focus on using fleet tracking and best practices in fleet management for improving day-to-day execution and operations. The next section is going to look at improving business and operations management overall. In the third section, we're going to talk about improving driver behavior and fleet safety. We'll do a wrap-up, and then, as Brad noted, we will do some Q&A at the back. I wanted to start with a bit of a profile on who was registered attending today's webinar and just some interesting things that we found. First of all, roughly 53% of people that have registered for the webinar today are not using fleet tracking, and roughly 47% are. And we did see a slight difference in the fleet sizes associated with those responses. So of those that are not using fleet tracking, we are seeing an average of 34 vehicles in the fleet, and of those that are using fleet tracking, we're seeing a slightly larger average of 44 vehicles. That's, of course, everyone's self-reported data, so that depends on everyone providing actual data, but I think it's an interesting stat in that I think we see in our experience, bigger organizations have historically been using fleet tracking as part of their fleet management system for a longer period of time, I think with more people on deck and more management on hand. I think one of the things that we have focused on at Azuga is making sure that the capabilities and the benefits that come from fleet tracking as part of an overall fleet management program are accessible to businesses of all sizes. And we'll talk about that today in our webinar. We are joined today by several folks that are actually running and managing pest control companies. We are joined by Kevin Lemasters, who is the president of EnviroPest. And we are also joined by Brianna Hatch, who is the Vice President of Operations for Hired Gun, Weed and Pest Control, both out of Colorado, incidentally. We also have Nicole Champlin, who is Azuga's Senior Manager of Customer Success. And again, I think talking about best practices coming from folks that are actually using the tools, managing a pest control business, and from Nicole's standpoint, working with 100 plus pest control companies that are using our services is probably the best way to get this across. And we'll hear specifically from each of these about key ways that fleet monitoring, fleet tracking is being used at various levels of the operation. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Brianna, who's going to talk a little bit about the day-to-day operations, but I want to start with what we see generally as key areas of focus for pest control firms. And a lot of this comes from, again, working with fleets large and small, so these are relatively top-level areas of focus, but improving operations and service levels, so identifying non-productive work times and figuring out how to optimize vehicle use, simplify processes dealing with customers and confirmations and invoicing. The second is monitoring vehicles and drivers. And again, a lot of that is knowing where and when vehicles are used. There's a real-time component in helping technicians get to where they're going. But there's also a larger component about making sure that you're utilizing your fleet in the best way possible. We focus a lot on safety, and we hear a lot from folks about boosting safety. When we think about safety, we're thinking about promoting and rewarding smart driving. One of the hallmarks of our fleet solution at Azuga is a reward-centric approach to helping make safe driving, smart driving, more of a contest among the workforce, and also giving the data for coaching and corrective action where needed. And then finally is enabling timely vehicle maintenance. Our solution is one that plugs into the OBD2 port, so we're able to provide real-time information about vehicle health and maintenance requirements and DCC codes. And so all of these are areas that we hear about very frequently when we are working with pest control firms, both large and small. So at this point, Bree, I'll go ahead and I'll hand it off to you. You can please kick our discussion off talking about how you're using fleet monitoring and tracking to improve your day-to-day operations.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. We are new to Azuga within the last year. We've used it through our busy part of our season, which is basically March through October, and we've found that we are able to keep better tabs on our employees, our technicians, and we are able to monitor where our trucks are at all times, and just keep a better look out onto our day-to-day operations. So we're actually really excited to go into our next season with our feet better placed into the swamp there, and so we're excited to move forward with Azuga and learn better how to reward our smart drivers and use the Azuga system better. So the first picture, do I need to click on that, Keith, or do you do that for me? Okay. I took a picture with, it's called the breadcrumbs, and I don't know how well you can see that, but we sent up to Montana in the mountains to pick up a machine that we needed to use out in our field here come February. And so we were able to monitor our truck in real time and monitor all the stops, start stops, hard brakes, excessive acceleration. We were able to pick the highway that this truck was on and identify, oh, well, that's a 75-mile-an-hour highway, and they were going 81 miles an hour. So we were able to real-time call our driver and say, hey, you know, it shows here that you're going 6 miles an hour over the speed limit, you know, and, you know, when you're driving that long of a drive, it was a 13-hour drive there one way. So we were able to, you know, watch our driver and be able to pinpoint exactly where he was, and then we were able to call the vendor who we were buying the machine from and give him accurate time frame to when our driver was going to be there to pick up that machine. So that's just one of the ways that we've used Azuga for us. Another way that we've used it, on the next slide, you'll be able to see, these are where all of our trucks are stationed right now. We're in the slow season for weed control and bug control here in Kersey, Colorado. And so all of our trucks, except for one, they're stationed here at the shop. They're getting maintained by our mechanic right now. But you can see there's one Lone Ranger up there, and it's truck 13, and it's labeled oil. He's actually at an oil facility doing some touch-up maintenance spray at a facility that just needs a little bit of rework. And so we're able to pinpoint that guy and see where he is at all times. The cool thing about Azuga is we've been able to really monitor all of our techs and what they are doing and where they are at all times. So it does update every 2 minutes, and so we're able to accurately know where all of our trucks are at any given time, and we have 19 trucks in our fleet. So that it gets kind of tedious when there's 19 people that you have to monitor and there's only one of you. Azuga's been great because my time is super valuable. Being the VP of operations, I don't have a lot of time in my day, and so this allows me to spread myself out to various jobs and locations, and I'm able to check up on all my employees with the click of a button. So it's actually really, really cool. So
Brianna,
the first thing I want to talk. Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask you. I know, in terms of using the location, I know we spoke of a couple things specifically where, one, I think you had a couple cases where drivers didn't know specifically where to go. And in a lot of cases, I know in doing some of the spraying and the pest control that you're doing in some of the open spaces that are not labeled roads or finite addresses, you're actually able to use GPS coordinates and guide them specifically where they need to go. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. On your next slide, I'll show you. Can you flip that over for me? There you go. So one of the real-time location abilities that I'm able to use is helping out my technicians. I'm able to give them routing assistance, meaning, for example, one example that I had is we do some residential, but mostly we do commercial out in the middle of nowhere. For those of you that don't know where Kersey, Colorado is, we are inundated in oil field work. So we do a lot of oil fields out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of cornfields, wheat fields, alfalfa fields, and we've got to do some spraying out there. But then we do some residential pest control jobs or spraying jobs there in town also. But one of the things that I was able to do just this past summer was one of my employees, he was going to a residential house and he needed to go to Johnson Way, but for whatever reason it was labeled Johnson Circle, and I was able to pull him up real time and see that he was on the wrong Johnson, and so I was able to say, well, you're about two blocks away. So, and then I gave him directions, turn here on such and such road, and then I was able to help him get to the correct residence, because that's always really embarrassing when you go up to the wrong house and you're not in the right place and you offer to spray their bugs and they don't have anything. So, and then there was another instance where I'm able to, my guys, when it's in the middle of the growing season and the corn is 10 feet tall and you can't see a well site because it's buried in corn, I'm able to pull them up. I'm able to use GPS, latitude, longitude, locations, and I'm able to plug it into our mapping system, and then I can route them in the direction that they need to go. And it's not always easy. It's not always turn at the next road. It's turn at the next ditch line and go over the canal there and through that field. So this has really made our lives a lot easier here in the office for the rest of my girls that work here with me. They're able to help our guys because we don't really know what's out there either, So this has actually been a blessing, and we've actually been able to save some time on man hours instead of them hunting and driving around for 15 minutes trying to find the entrance into the middle of the field. We can actually help them out with that. So that's been really, really cool, being able to do that, and I can do it all from my office. So some other things that we've been able to do and cut down on, we've been able to monitor activities, watching their stop locations and their duration. One example I have for this one is I had one guy who went to a location and he was there for an hour and a half. When he got back to the office, I was able to check his app records. Something that we have to do for the Colorado Department of Ag, we have to monitor all of our spraying applications and what we're doing with that. And I noticed that he was only there for a half hour. So I was able to monitor, well, you were only there for a half hour, but according to your breadcrumbs, I was able to look and you were there for an hour and a half. And that's when we discovered that his pump wasn't working very well. He had expressed to our mechanic and myself that, well, he had to work on his pump for an hour, and so that filled in the time that we were missing. And so we were able to, one, identify the downtime, what he was doing and why he was doing it, and two, we were able to basically put out a fire for the next day, because if he doesn't have a working pump, then we're down a whole entire truck for the next day. So we were able to get our mechanic back on his pump, get it serviced, and get him back into the field the next day with zero issues and zero problems. Another thing that we've been able to do is watch excessive idling. We've been able to save, I was actually just looking over with our accountant in our budget, and we've cut our fuel bill by about a quarter. So that's huge for us, being able to save that money, because we've been able to monitor excessive idling. You know, when the guys are just sitting there filling out paperwork, or maybe they go to spray a location for a half hour instead of having their truck on for a half hour because they wanted to keep their truck cool while they were outside working. We were able to watch that, and we reward them. You know, when we see that, you know, they don't have a lot of excessive idling, and we don't see a lot of lengthy stops, unnecessary lengthy stops, we're able to reward them, you know, for staying on task, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and doing it with good quality. So that's been really, really great for us as well. It shows us excessive stoppings or hard brakes. Anybody that knows about chemicals and tanks in the back of your truck, the last thing you want to do is accelerate too fast or stop too quickly, where the back of that tank, 200-gallon tank of chemical, is flying through the cab of your pickup. So we're able to watch the, you know, the hard brakes and the quick accelerations, and when we see very few of those, we're able to reward our guys excessively and say, you know, hey, thanks for taking such good safety measures and doing a good job while you're out in the field. You know, I think that's probably everybody's biggest problem, at least for our business, is we can't be with 19 people at all times, watching them doing their, you know, their everyday tasks. It's just, it's not possible. So this allows us to be with our drivers in their trucks and monitor what they're doing all day long, every day, and I'm sure they love it. So, but they do get rewarded for great, you know, great responsibility and doing what they're supposed to be doing, you know, when we can't always be there. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was priority service request dispatch. We don't see this a lot in our field just because we are very much planned, but occasionally we've had some people call and they're allergic to wasps, and they need their wasp sprayed because their kiddo's allergic to them, and so they need it sprayed right away. If we've got the truck with the correct chemical out in the field, we're able to pinpoint where they are and say, yes, absolutely, we can get out to your location. And knowing their location, you know, where they're currently spraying, and allowing, you know, it allows us to give the new customer a better idea as to when they can be expecting them to their location or their property to get their wasp sprayed. So it's, Azuga has been a lifesaver for me in the last year. So I've been really blessed to be able to use it, and it saved our company a lot of time and money, I would say. So.
Perfect. Kevin, I don't know,
Yeah.
I thought in a conversation that you and I had, you had a situation where you were dealing with priority service requests. Is that something that resonates with your business?
Definitely. We find that each of our office staff having the accessibility to the real-time data is helpful. It's not often that we have a customer that requires us to be there immediately, but when we do get in a situation, especially in the slower time of the year, it's nice that we can pull up the map. And as Bree was showing, you know, you can see where all of your vehicles are, and we can look at their schedules and be able to let a customer know that we have somebody in the area, and we could be there within 30 minutes to an hour. So again, it doesn't happen very often, but this is a great tool to be able to allow your office staff to be able to see that and be able to coordinate that to take care of the customer. So it certainly gives a great wow experience.
Cool. Well, that's great to hear. So I think from our conversation about using things in terms of real-time location, we're going to transition to a discussion looking at using the tools and using the reports for, you know, stepping back and managing the business on more of a, you know, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And I've asked Nicole Champlin, our Senior Manager of Customer Success, drawing from her experience in working with many pest control companies of all sizes, to jump in and talk a little bit about the types of information that is available and how it's being used. I think one of the things that I at least want to start everyone off with is, from our own customer research and actually a lot of other research that's out there, it's clear that most businesses, most operations that are using fleet tracking are using it, frankly, for the types of real-time management purposes, the daily location reports that Bree and Kevin were just talking about. I think what's available and what is at people's fingertips with fleet tracking tools is a lot of very rich data that can help in many other areas. So Nicole, I'll hand it over to you to guide us through this section.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Keith. So as Keith said, my name is Nicole Champlin. I'm the Senior Manager of the Customer Success Team here at Azuga. And my goal is to help everyone identify different ways that they're able to use their fleet tracking solution to get the most out of the data that's being collected. The most common use, of course, is going to be the real-time management and daily location reports. However, there's so much more to the data that's being collected on a daily basis. So let's look at some of the different ways that we can use some of the data to help get the most out of our fleet tracking solution. So one of the most useful ways, and where you'll see some of the biggest returns on your investment, are going to be the monthly fuel usage reports, and also the potential savings that you can gain from different tools that are available through Azuga. We'll also look into vehicle utilization. If your vehicles are being over or underutilized, it also can give you an idea if vehicles are being utilized after hours. And then finally, we'll look at behavior monitoring and coaching for drivers and how that affects the overall budget for your entire fleet. So the first one we're going to look at is going to be the monthly fuel usage and savings. So what are some of the things that affect the fuel costs for your fleet? A lot of this is going to be centered around the driver behavior, which is where Azuga excels at, is we take a more driver-centric approach to traditional GPS tracking. So what that means is we pay a little bit more attention to your individual driver's behavior and how that affects the overall fuel usage. So some of the increases that you'll see are directly related to your speeding events. As Bree mentioned, the excessive idling, any type of idling that is not necessary can be avoided to help save some money on your budget. We have inefficient routing. If someone is taking the long way to get somewhere, of course, that adds not only the maintenance costs, but uses extra fuel. And then unauthorized vehicle usage, meaning if someone has one of your vehicles out and say their mom calls and says, hey, I just got this ant infestation, can you bring your truck by and spray for me? So let's make sure that the business vehicle is being used for business purposes. Next slide, please. So through the Azuga web portal, you'll see some of the different tools that are available are very in-depth data reports, but you'll also see some at a glance overall, how is my fleet doing? So here is a great way to monitor and manage some of the costs across your organization. This one's specifically related to fuel. So you can set different goals for your entire fleet and set the price for fuel. And what this is showing you is the rings are going to point out if vehicles are in or out of compliance with the goals that you have set as a company. So when you see green, it means those vehicles are doing fine. They're within what your goal is. However, when you see red, it could be a sign of potential issues or vehicles that are being overutilized. So not only does this screen show you what you spent approximately across your fleet as well as your carbon footprint, but it also allows you to set goals, saying if I reduce my drive time by, say, on this example, 20 minutes per vehicle per day, here's potentially what I could save in one day across my fleet just in fuel and operating costs, not to mention the lesser risk for any type of accidents or incidents along the way. So you're able to run these different reports to help you target specific areas where you would like to save a little bit of money across the fleet. So the data can help you identify those areas. Next slide, please. So also in this same tool, you'll be able to look into vehicle utilization, as I kind of mentioned before. So in this particular example, what we see is we have 3 vehicles that are exceeding what we feel is the appropriate drive time per vehicle per day, one that is exceeding it almost double or a little over double what we thought would be appropriate. So this can help us identify a couple things. Is this vehicle being used, overutilized? and we have others that are not being used as much, we can share that workload and spread the utilization out across the entire fleet. Or is this a sign of the vehicle being used after hours or unauthorized vehicle usage? So in helping you identify vehicle utilization issues or potential issues, what this is going to help you do is spread out the maintenance costs across your fleet. If you have a vehicle that has been overutilized, then the maintenance costs will be higher on that vehicle. You'll also be spending quite a bit more fuel than what you expect to spend per vehicle. So some of the tools that we have available within our web portal will help you identify the vehicle utilization and any potential issues that are there. So along those same lines, we bring into the same the same equation, if you will, the factor of driver behavior and how that affects your overall cost. So next slide, please. So when we're looking at driver behavior, we can set goals for individual drivers as well. So what this is showing us is we are looking into one particular driver for one day. So when we see all red rings, this means that this driver probably has some pretty significant issues that not only are increasing the wear and tear and maintenance costs and fuel costs for our vehicles, but also increases the risk of having any potential accident or incident in the near future. So when we're coaching drivers on how to drive a little more safely or how to treat the vehicles a little bit better while they're on the road, this is a very powerful tool. When you're speaking to drivers, sometimes you'll see their eyes just kind of glaze over and they're not really paying attention. But when you put something like this in front of them that says, here is your tracking data, it really opens their eyes. One thing that I learned when I first installed the device in my vehicle was I did not realize how hard on my vehicle I was as a driver. I thought I was driving safely. I'd never had a vehicle accident, anything along those lines. I hadn't had a speeding ticket since I first got my license, so I felt overall I was a safe driver. Once I installed the device and I started looking into my own data, I saw information like this where the data showed how much risk there was with me behind the wheel. So in opening your driver's eyes, it allows them to take a moment to realize that even if they feel they're driving safely, the data can show otherwise. So here we would use this particular example to coach a driver and say, 22 speeding incidents or 10 hard braking incidents, that's a significant amount of events for one particular day. So let's look into this. Let's find out why we're triggering these events. Are we following too closely? Are we waiting until the last moment to hit the brakes? All of these, once your drivers start opening their eyes and driving a little more safely, you'll see that affect your bottom line as far as your budget is concerned. Speeding incidents do waste fuel as well as increase the risk for accidents, and you'll also see a reduction in the hard braking and sudden acceleration. So as I mentioned, Azuga is very unique in that we approach the GPS, the typical GPS tracking system, from a driver-centric perspective, and that we pay attention to individual driver behavior. If we can correct risky driving behavior by each individual driver, it makes your fleet overall a safer fleet on the road and also a more efficient fleet while on the road. So it helps your bottom line and helps you budget.
Well, yeah, thanks, Nicole, because I know we hear, a lot of times when we're talking with people that they're managing to this kind of driver coaching kind of with a rear view mirror. So you're looking at, number of violations, number of incidents, number of reports coming from inbound calls, or even, accidents. And this is a tool that lets you get in front of that so you're able to find hidden risk. If you see someone that's exhibiting, especially hard stops and speeding, those folks are prone for nose-to-tail collisions. And as Bree noted, when you have a tank full of chemicals in the back of the vehicle, that's not anything you want. Well, great. Thank you very much for that. And talking in terms of this type of coaching for drivers is a good segue into the next part of the conversation, where we want to focus in on improving driver behavior and fleet safety. Kevin LeMasters is going to guide us through this section and talk with us a little bit about how they are using driver scores, information about behavior to help drive safety into their culture. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I'm Kevin Lee Masters with EnviroPest. We're a small company of 20 people. We have about 15 trucks on the road, and I've been using Azuga for about 2 years. We previously were using another GPS program, and in the past I also have history using a drive cam program as well. So we have been very happy with Azuga and the tool that it is for us. Again, some of the things we've already covered in regards to just the real-time data and the availability and the breadcrumb reporting and all of that we utilize on a regular basis. When it comes to behavior, it's interesting, we've learned, and not just in driving, but in other things, a lot of times it comes down to when you sit down with one of your staff and you start visiting about a behavior that you're struggling with, a lot of times they're not even aware of that behavior. I had a conversation with one of my people yesterday about missed time at work and was sharing how many days they've missed this year, and they had no idea that it had been that many days. So a lot of times we have a perception that people really understand where they're at in their behavior and how they're functioning in work, and they have a completely different perception of that. So this is great to be able to pull tools out and to be able to look at this information and share it on a regular basis to coach and begin to change that behavior. One of the things that when we started using the reporting, we put the tool in place about 2 years ago, and I'd say for the first 6 to 8 months we didn't utilize it a whole lot for behavior changing. We kind of put it in place and let it sit stagnant because we realized that when we put something like this into play, a lot of people look at it as the big brother, and we certainly don't approach things with a stick approach. We try to come at it with a carrot approach. So we wanted to be able to utilize this in a way that we could reward people for doing the right thing instead of making them feel bad for making mistakes. So when we started pulling the data out, what we would do is just pull it out, drop it into a basic spreadsheet, and show people what their scores were in the different categories. The hard braking, sudden acceleration, all those different key areas. I think it's on the next slide or so, and talks about what those are. And each month, our people really begin to take ownership in what those things look like. So when we do our monthly meetings, we'd go through the scores. Everybody would see the score that they had in each of those categories, and we would say, okay, the person with the highest score in this area, they get a $10 gift card to somewhere. But we also recognize the improvement, because we have a lot of folks that just don't realize how hard they're braking, the sudden acceleration, all the different things that play into that. Let's face it, most of us have been on the road driving for a number of years, and we're all wired differently. We all think we drive pretty well. And it's kind of interesting when you put a program in place that begins to manage and measure everyone on an equal playing field, how different those scores come out. I know the first time we sat down with our staff and went over this, it's some interesting looks on people's faces when they started seeing what their scores look like, and then when they begin to see some of their peers as well. A lot of times you get a lot of peer accountability when you are addressing these in kind of a team atmosphere, because nobody wants to be the guy with the low score. So it's been very effective for us in that way, Keith.
Well, that's great. I think, going back to what Nicole was saying about the dashboards and looking at, specific behaviors, I think being able to use the tools to have really, nuanced conversations with drivers. I've been spending a long time working in the field of fleet tracking and workforce management, and I think years ago people used to focus on dots on a map, right? Where's my team? What are they doing? Thinking about productivity from the top down, but more and more, hearing from you and many other businesses, especially in a tight labor force, you can't afford just to look at someone's behavior and make black and white decisions that, I'm just going to relieve you of your duties and find someone else to do that job. It's harder to do that in a tight labor force. Having the tools to actually have a good conversation, understand root causes, and help employees actually develop to become, your best employees is a really strong way to manage the organization. So you're using, and how often do you do team meetings or safety meetings where you're focused on this data?
We have all of our staff together once a month, and this is part of our regular monthly training. And then, you know, we've only had one instance where we felt like we needed to provide some additional support and put this person through a driver training program in which they sat down, did an online training course to kind of help them understand. And again, we watched their numbers a little closely, visited with them on more of a regular weekly basis just to kind of help them see and understand where the opportunities were. And again, when you're talking about it on a regular basis and communicating on a regular basis and they're more aware of it, that behavior begins to change in the right direction. I mean, most people want to do the right thing. They realize that if they're braking hard and accelerating, that there's safety risk involved. There's also additional, you know, wear and tear on that vehicle. So there's a lot of benefit for them to be able to get their scores back in line, and they realize that.
You know, I think one of the things that's noteworthy from your conversation, right, is you were saying you are pulling the data out, right? We have that mobile app view that we were showing, which makes drivers' scores for each technician, right, available right to them. They can also see their team scores. You know, but I know you pull the data out, you put it into spreadsheets. I think the goal is to get the data in a very easily consumed fashion. You know, I think it was Bree at the head end of the session that said, you know, her time is extremely valuable, and you know, I think that's true of everyone, especially when you've got an operational focus in a business like pest control. There's a lot of moving parts, and you don't have a ton of time to sit down and, you know, jockey a whole lot of data around. So I think we've focused in the Azuga Fleet tool on putting that data and the information right at your fingertips, but also making it very clear and very accessible to the entire team. So again, it becomes an overarching part of the way you drive the culture, and not just something that you hit on after someone has had an accident or someone got a speeding ticket. We have a framework, and again, you know, the levels of attention and everything else that you bring to this varies by company, but we look at a framework for safety improvement, which starts with active monitoring, looking for you know, the ability to identify the types of behaviors that increase risk, giving the information that's needed to do the types of coaching, whether it's on the fly or whether it's in a periodic monthly type of meeting, and then making that a circular loop. So again, this is something that becomes part of the way, a key part of the way that you manage to the fleet and improve the fleet is improving the way everyone thinks about safety and smart driving, and bringing down the types of risky behaviors that cause a lot of the problems, frankly, that plague service operation-oriented businesses like pest control. There's a question that I've had, and I at least wanted to put it on here. There was another question that someone asked about the utilization reports and how do we develop that baseline. When we get into Q&A, I want to go back to that, but I know we always get questions about driver scoring and how does driver scoring work, and it's using the information that's coming off of the Azuga OBD2 device that slides into the vehicle, which is picking up information coming directly from the ECU, where we're getting information based on events. So for speeding, for braking, for idling, for acceleration and hard cornering. We also do have posted speed limits, so we're actually able to look at speeds in context of posted speeds. That information is normalized for miles driven. So obviously someone who is driving a lot and has three speeding incidents is different than someone who is only driving 20 miles and has 3 speeding incidents, so helping you understand that in terms of severity. And then that is processed and it's looked at on a fleet-by-fleet basis, so we're actually baselining each fleet. So that is how the scores work. We have more detail on that if anyone is interested. You know, I think one of the things that I wanted to end with here is, typically what we see in the impacts of using fleet telematics on most businesses. And again, we have a driver-centric focus, a safety focus, and you start to see very quickly a reduction in accidents. You see a great reduction in the types of indicators for accidents, which is primarily, speeding events and aggressive driving, which is hard stops, hard starts, hard cornering. I think the other thing that comes along with that is the operational related impacts. Again, going back to many of the issues that Bree covered off on in the beginning of the webinar, drops in fuel costs, idle time, miles driven overall through better routing and curtailing long routes, lower maintenance costs, spikes in productivity, and better vehicle utilization. So again, I think overall for those that are using fleet tracking, I think the takeaways are there are fleet tracking solutions out there that can help you do a much better job with fleet safety. And for those that have not yet taken on GPS tracking, I think there's a lot of improvement in these systems that brings the benefits of safety and operational efficiency that in years past was only afforded by very large fleets. A lot of that stuff is now at the fingertips of any fleet size, and as you noted, Kevin's organization is 20 people with 15 trucks. You can see a lot of great benefit from this type of tool. So Brad, that is the content for the webinar. If you want to go ahead and sew things up for us and see if we had any Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. We did get some great questions rolling, and we'll continue to field them during the Q&A. And again, just go ahead and type those into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Maybe Keith, to start with, you want to take a look at that utilization question you said that we received earlier. And again, I'll repeat the question. It was where do you get a baseline for utilization? The comment was it's a great graph, but how do you get it?
Nicole, do you want to address the question on utilization?
Sure. So vehicle utilization, what we mainly monitor for most of our clients is the vehicle usage after hours, say between 7 p.m. and 5 or 6 a.m., depending on the use case. And what that helps us identify is unauthorized usage. But during the workday, if we see that most of your technicians have the same or similar schedule as far as the number of client calls, the amount of actual work that they're having to do in the field, what we're going to look at there is, are there individual vehicles that are being used more frequently than others? If so, it helps us identify, do we need, is it a specific type of truck that's being used versus another type of vehicle? So do we need to make adjustments in the fleet as far as the type of vehicle that we're using? Is it the equipment that's on the vehicle that's being needed more so than other vehicles? So looking into vehicle utilization, it helps you identify a few key things. Not only is the fleet sufficient as far as the equipment on the vehicle, but also the vehicle itself. And then is the vehicle, taking the most efficient route, or is it taking the longest way back to the office? Things along those lines. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're looking into vehicle utilization.
Hey, Nicole, this
I
is Kevin.
think along those same lines,
something.
I know go ahead, Kevin.
If I could just add something to that I think is helpful. I have it set up so that we've set up our after-hours parameters, the times, the start time of the day, the end time of the day, the weekends. And I actually receive an email if one of my vehicles moves outside of that time window. I receive an email so that I know that I've got a vehicle in motion and I can act on that immediately. So it's not like you have to be sitting and watching the website. You don't have to log in. You can set up notifications. I think it's important that people know you can set up the notifications so that you're getting that information. So if you have a larger organization, each of your management staff can be set up with triggers to be identified if there are issues out there they want to keep a closer eye on.
Great. You know, I was going to add, and this applies to, I think, much to large fleets that may have a number of locations. But I know we did a custom piece of analysis for one firm that took a look at vehicle utilization rates across all of its locations, looking for anomalies. And I think what it highlighted is where they saw, you know, adjacent areas where they had higher and lower levels of utilization, and they used that as a method for kind of smoothing out the balance of their assets in various locations. So they were able to see when they had a number of very low utilized vehicles in one location and high utilization in another, can they balance that out by moving one vehicle to another just based on the velocity of business at one location versus another. So I think that's another way in terms of thinking about utilization that we were able to use the data coming from vehicle activities to help them, I think, get more efficient use of their assets.
Keith, another question that rolled in here was software compatibility. Is it compatible with some of the software that's used in the industry, such as PestPack?
You know, so I'll start, and Nicole, I'll ask you to jump in. Our system is designed to be very wide open with APIs, so it's very easy to handle integration. I know we are integrated in with a number of systems and a number of fuel card programs. Have we done, Nicole, I'll ask you, have we done PestPack specifically, or do we know if we have that?
To the best of my knowledge, we have not yet integrated with PestPack specifically, but along the same lines as what Keith was mentioning, we do have open APIs, so that way you're able to pull the Azuga data into another system, and then we also are able to call for information. So if you wanted to integrate data from, say, PestPack into Azuga, we're able to do that as well. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves with, with Azuga, is that we are a very flexible company. We have a different culture as far as being what we call a yes company or a yes culture. We want to make sure that the data you receive is being used the best way that it can, and that you're getting the most value out of it as you can. So data integration is something that we do with virtually anything you can imagine. What we do is, if we do not have an existing API that can allow you to pull the data into your own system or allow us to call the data into the Azuga system, is we get our engineering team involved, and we either write the specific API to give you the data that you need, or we work with, say if it's PestPack, we work with PestPack to make sure that we're getting the proper data that we can then call into the Azuga system. So I'm not sure if we have integrated with PestPack specifically, but we are willing to integrate with anything that we possibly can, just so that you can get the most value out of all the data.
A question we have was, do you have plans to offer a dash cam with the system?
Quick answer is yes. It is not available yet, but that is going to be an early 2017 offering. I don't specifically know the month that we will have it launched, but that is something that we are pursuing.
The question we had was, does your service work in Alberta, Canada?
Yes. So we are wide across all of Canada with many clients in Canada. We do go all the way from the west to the east. Do have several people in Alberta with great coverage up there.
Question came in. Let's see. What happens when the driver pulls out the ODB2 module but claims it just stopped working?
Sure.
I can help with that too, Nicole.
Perfect. Go for it, Bree.
Kind of like what Kevin says, whenever there's any sort of activity outside of business hours, he gets an email. We also get emails of unplugging and plugging back in. It actually sends us an email and says, truck 13 was unplugged at such and such time. So it definitely alerts us real time, and so even if I'm not in the office, I do receive those emails, and it does notify you and says that it was unplugged. So,
and then along those same lines, we also have another alert that is called a vehicle not tracking alert. And what that alert does is lets you know if for any reason we are unable to track the vehicle. If it is out of cell phone service, if the device is unplugged, if there's any kind of issue, that alert will trigger to let you know that for whatever reason we're unable to track the vehicle, and we have that also for safety purposes. So that way you can call your driver, make sure everything is okay as well.
I think it's noteworthy when for people to know. So before we ship any of our devices, we bench test everything to make sure that we have green lights. So when things show up at your site, it's already pre-tested and we know it works. There is the odd occasion when something will show up dead on arrival, but it's not very frequent. So I think, when you hear claims that the device just stopped working, there's not much in these devices for them to just stop working. Sometimes they can be kicked accidentally, but frankly our device, unlike others, is a very low profile device. So it actually, kind of tucks up into the vehicle cabin. You kind of have to try hard in order to knee that thing or kick it with your foot or whatever. So we do have those alerts in place, but, again, I think that's, an issue that, more building it into the culture that, these are our assets, this is our business, we need to monitor it from every angle, and this is an important one for us to monitor.
Nicole?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I actually have the owner of Hired Gun here, and he's been listening, and we kind of devised another little system to ensure that we played with it to unplug it and plug it back in. And so I'll let him kind of tell you what we...
So our biggest worry was employees in the field unplugging it, because since it is an ODB2, when you're getting in and out of the vehicle, it is possible to get bumped with your knee or whatnot, and that's a valid excuse, but an excuse nonetheless. So the employees do not know what the Azuga is or where it is. All they know is that we have GPS and we can watch everything. So we physically removed the ODB2 from its little keeper underneath the dash, zip-tied the Azuga adapter to the ODB2 device, or to the adapter itself, and then moved it up high and zip-tied it to something that was free underneath the dash. So the employees do not know it's there, and it cannot physically come undone unless they cut the zip tie. So it's just a quick little means of security that, if you get an email saying it was removed and they have the answer of, well, I don't know, you can kind of narrow it down that that's BS.
Yes, very much.
That's a great solution.
We had a question here.
That's all I had to add in there. You guys have a good day.
Thanks. I appreciate you jumping in there with some insights there. Next question we had was, how many people can look at the different screens to see where the trucks are, such as phone operators?
So with the Azuga system, we don't actually limit the number of users that you have. So it's unlimited. However many users you want to create user logins for, you'll be able to have on the system at the same time. We also do have the ability through the Azuga web portal that you can apply what we call a role. Basically what a role is permissions within the app, or excuse me, within the web portal. And it will allow or deny access to certain areas of the web portal or to certain functions or features through the web portal. So if you wanted to give someone access to only view a couple of the reports, then you can specifically say which reports you want them to view. Or if you want them to be able to edit drivers but none of the other administrative tasks or duties, you're also able to get down to that. So we don't limit the number of users, and then you can get down with a fine-tooth comb to say specifically what exactly someone is or is not allowed to do or view within the web portal.
Okay, next question we had was, are all alerts sent by email?
So all the alerts are set to trigger as an email. If you wanted to get them as text messages, we are able to do a text to email alert. If you just give us your phone number and then who your provider is, we're able to convert that text message in, or excuse me, that emailed alert into a text message so that you can also receive them by text.
Question we had, just wanting to know a little bit more about Azuga. How long has it been in business and using this platform and model?
So Azuga was founded about 4 years ago. We have a parent company named Danlaw that actually manufactures our hardware. Azuga started as a software arm of Danlaw, and Danlaw is the company that provides all of the OBD2 devices for insurance programs that you see like Progressive and Allstate. So there's more than 3 million of the OBD2 devices that Azuga uses. So it's a tried and tested device. Initially, Azuga got started as an organization kind of integrating between data feeds coming from the OBD2 devices and the insurance company back office systems for handling their usage-based insurance programs. It was a very easy jump at that point to get into fleet tracking. Our founding team has a great amount of experience in fleet-oriented businesses and fleet technology businesses. Our founder, Anant Rani, was the co-founder of Zora, which was the leading wireless workforce management system. We have people on our team at all levels that come from Element and Telenav and others in Zora and other organizations in the fleet technology industry. So we have been on this platform that we built since 2013. Our platform right now, we have tens of thousands of fleet vehicles on this. We have fleets as large as 5,000 vehicles. We have fleets as small as 1 to 2 vehicles. So it scales extremely well.
And we had a couple questions relating to mobile device tracking. Do you, for example, what type of mobile device tracking capabilities do you have, and can you monitor all the information from a mobile device?
So I'll answer this, and Nicole, I'll ask you to bolster my answer. So we do not offer as a standalone service, the kind of mobile phone tracking as you see with some providers and wireless carriers, that sort of thing. We are examining mobile phone options, but right now our core product that provides tracking data into our system is one of our OBD2 devices or asset tracking devices that we just launched. But Nicole, I think in terms of use of mobile phones with organizations that have our OBD2 device, do you want to talk about some of that?
Sure. So we do have a smartphone app, which there were a couple of screenshots earlier showing the scoring piece specifically. So what the mobile app does is it allows your drivers the insight while also keeping tabs on information through the background. So what I mean by that is it does allow you to monitor cell phone usage while the vehicle is in motion. So if your driver's parked at a parking spot, a parking lot, sitting at a long light, something along those lines and is using his phone, then we don't monitor that. But once the vehicle starts moving, we do monitor for any cell phone usage, meaning incoming and outgoing phone calls, as well as text messages. So if you have the distracted driving monitoring piece, you'll be able to see that usage, and then you can also go one step farther as far as safety is concerned, where with the Android phones, you are able to also block cell phone usage while the vehicle is in motion. And you can determine at what speed the vehicle has to be traveling in order to block that usage. Meaning if you feel it's safe for your driver to use their cell phones if they're going under, say, 20 or 25 miles per hour, but once they go above that, you don't want them to use it, it will block the cell phone use while the vehicle is in motion. So we do have a lot of capability when it comes to the mobile app and cell phone usage. The disclaimer being that Apple is very particular about what you are or are not allowed to do or monitor with their phones. So the distracted driving monitoring and also the Azuga Drive Safe, which is the cell phone blocking, is restricted to Android-only phones at this point in time. But we do have that safety feature available as well.
And through our app, as well as we have a Bluetooth option, we can also pair drivers with vehicles. So if you have an open pool of fleet vehicles in which a driver may be in any vehicle at any time, you're able to actually pair the driver to the vehicle, so you still understand the specific driver behavior regardless of vehicle.
Okay, we did get a question. Someone said that they had missed part of the webinar and would like to review it. And can we get a copy of it? The answer is yes. We are recording this webinar, and once we get it edited and cleaned up a little bit, we'll upload it to our website. So you can get it from pctonline.com, or you can also get it from the folks at Azuga. You can see the contact info on the screen there. If you call that number, that's probably the best way to get a hold of the folks there, or you can email them, and they'll be happy to send you a link to that as well. That's all we had as far as questions. I want to thank everyone for participating, again, taking some time out of your schedule to be a part of it, and thank all of our speakers for doing a terrific job. And I'm going to turn things over to Keith here for the final word, and let folks know how they can get more information from Azuga.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So first of all, a giant thank you to Kevin and Brianna for taking time out of their schedules to help present this information to everyone. If you have any questions or comments, again, the phone number or info@azuga.com is a great way. Happy to make the slides available for your consumption along with the webinar. And if you have any questions, if you send in an email, indicate that you took part in the webinar, and we'll make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.